All right, welcome everyone. My name is Subhas. I'm a customer success manager here at Lab Simplified. I'll be co-hosting this webinar today along with Amari. We are so excited to have you join us for today's webinar on how to troubleshoot quality control issues in the lab. And before I go any further, let's do a quick check-in. Please drop a thumbs up in the chat section if you can hear and see me okay.
Okay, we have some thumbs up.
All right. Yeah, we have a good crowd here today. A lot of people signed up for this webinar. We will give them a couple of minutes for them to join before we start the presentation. And while we're waiting for them, I would like to go over a few common housekeeping items. And one of the questions that we get asked a lot is this webinar recorded? Yes, it will be recorded, and once the webinar is over, we'll send you the details on how and where you can access them. So you don't need to take notes during the presentation. You will be receiving a recorded version. And if you experience any buffering issues, please try to close other apps that are running in your computer, and also close any browsers that are usually open. So that usually helps. For the Q&A session, you don't have to wait until the end to ask a question. Please submit your questions in the Q&A section. We'll try to answer them throughout the presentation, but if we didn't get time to answer them, we will make sure that we'll send those answers in your inbox. So please feel free to ask as many questions as you like. And we'll also be running some polls during the presentation. So please pay attention to the interactive section in your screen. And once the webinar is over, you will see a webinar evaluation form at the end. We encourage you to complete that form, as that will help us improve in the future. So I would really appreciate if you all could complete those evaluation forms. Right. And I would also like to briefly mention about our sponsor here, Lab Simplified. Lab Simplified is an inventory management and a process improvement software built specifically for a lab like yours. It has a built-in features that supports your quality management systems, and also with the electronic maintenance log feature that will help your lab stay efficient. And there are many generic solutions out there which are not built to address the unique challenges that we medtech face every day. So, even to this day, most laboratories manage the inventory either with the spreadsheets or paper logs and scratch papers, and that can cost labs thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours in the lost productivity and waste. And that is where Lab Simplified comes in. Lab Simplified helps you stay organized. It will help you reduce cost and maintain compliance. So if you're looking to improve your inventory management and compliance and moving away from paper logs, please do visit our website to learn more and request a demo. Okay. And this is our second of our educational webinar series. The last webinar that we did on competency assessment was a huge success. And we will continue to bring you valuable insights to support your laboratory. So please make sure to follow us on LinkedIn and visit our website for any updates. And thank you again for joining us today. And today's topic, quality control, troubleshooting. And as we all know that quality control is the heart of the reliable lab results. When QC fails, that's when the real challenge begins, right? And figuring out how and why it happened and how to fix it without wasting time and compromising accuracy. It's really important. And that's what this webinar is all about. So now, having said that, I'm especially excited to introduce our speaker today, Amari Henderson. Amari is an experienced medical laboratory professional with a degree in medical laboratory science from the University of Kentucky and an MBA from Northern Kentucky University. She has experience as an MLS and a microbiology lab supervisor. Amari currently works as a technical support specialist, troubleshooting quality control related issues in the lab. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Amari, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Subhash. I truly appreciate everyone joining us today for this webinar. I'm truly excited today, really excited to talk about troubleshooting quality control related issues. As Subhash mentioned, I've had my fair share of quality control related issues. I was a generalist for a long time. I worked in chemistry, hematology, all of the different areas of the lab. I eventually moved into microbiology, and then I supervised the lab. So I've run into a few different QC related issues, and now things have kind of come full circle, and I troubleshoot quality control related issues with customers every day. I truly enjoy doing it. It's very rewarding, and I love helping customers put out the small fires and just helping them pinpoint the sources of their QC related issues. So again, as Subhash mentioned, this is a Q&A. So at any time, if you have a question, just put it in the chat, actually the Q&A section, and Subhash will be monitoring that, and then we'll kind of take pauses throughout to answer any questions you may have. So this is more interactive. I don't want to talk at you the whole time, but I am happy to answer any questions that you may have today, and we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so these are some of the learning objectives that we will kind of cover today. We'll basically define the purpose of quality control. We'll recognize the common failures, the reasons for shifts, trends, and random errors. We'll apply a step-by-step approach. I'm going to give you some step-by-step tools and tricks that you can use to kind of pinpoint QC issues in a manner that's fast and doesn't affect patient care. We want to calculate and interpret key QC statistics. We're going to talk about mean, standard deviation, coefficient of variation. We also want to understand how to apply Westgard rules. We're going to look at Levy-Jennings charts and how you can interpret certain errors and patterns that you may see on your charts. We also want to differentiate between QC material issues versus instrument or test system failures. So we can distinguish between the two in a way that is easier for you to do throughout your QC troubleshooting process. We also are going to utilize critical questions and documentation to kind of help you have a more efficient and effective QC troubleshooting process. So again, at any time, ask your questions and I'd be happy to answer those. So what exactly is quality control? It's the fancy definition. It's a statistical method used to track and assess the analytical process that generates patient results. But what does that mean for the clinical lab? What does that mean? So we all know that the lab is responsible for test results that are generated by each lab. They play a crucial role in helping to diagnose patients, and they are important and sometimes life-saving for treatment decisions. So QC data points are obtained by testing control materials under the same conditions as your patient samples. And so over here to the side, I kind of put a little phrase there that QC micromanages the measurement process. So think of QC as like the micromanager that's kind of looking over everything just to make sure everything is going well and your QC is within the acceptable ranges. But why does that matter? So it ensures patient safety and diagnostic accuracy. It prevents misdiagnosis and unnecessary treatment. And it also helps laboratories comply with regulatory standards by such organizations as CLIA, CAP, different regulations. So the main thing that we want to do, we want to identify the source. And I have this guy here who's reached the top of the mountain because we all, everyone who's been in a situation where your QC is out and you're just struggling, you're frustrated to get it back in, it is the best feeling when you finally pinpoint the source of the issue and you can get to the source and fix everything and your patient samples are okay and you're able to continue with your testing. So that's the feeling that I'm representing here, that moment when you identify the source. But that's the hard part sometimes. So these are some of the QC failure patterns that we may face. A lot of times you'll experience a shift in your data. So a shift just means that it's a sudden change in your QC values. It's also often due to reagent or calibration related issues, which we'll talk about this more in later slides, so I won't go into depth. A trend, that's the gradual movement in one direction. So it could possibly be due to deteriorating reagents or instrument wear and tear. So those are some of the things that can happen during a trend. Random error. So there's no predictable pattern. It's often caused by operator errors or environmental conditions, maybe with your instrument, maybe something like humidity or something like that over time. So we'll go ahead and talk further about these in later slides, but I kind of wanted to introduce these QC patterns just so you can get an idea of what we're going to be talking about here. And I actually want to go back because I think this is really important. I face this a lot when I talk to customers every day. The difference between QC, reagent, and calibrator. A lot of times what I hear interchanged a lot are QC and reagent. And I think it's a very popular thing. People sometimes use the word reagent when they speak about their QC. So let's just cover the differences between these two before I go any further. So QC basically monitors the performance of your assay and your test system, whereas your calibrator, it sets the measurement baseline. And then thirdly, your reagent, it's going to react with your patient samples to generate results. And 9 times out of 10, you are going to be using a third-party QC so that you have a different source material than your reagent and calibrator, because a lot of times your calibrator and your reagent, they're going to come from your instrument manufacturer. So that's a really important thing to note here. So that's just one thing I wanted to cover because I do hear that a lot. So I wanted to go back and cover that. Steps to determining the source of your QC issue. So you run your QC, it's been fine all week. All of a sudden you've gotten to the middle of the week, your QC, I don't know, for sodium, it's shifted up or it's outside of the 3SD range here. The first thing we want to do is check our QC material. We want to compare our results from the last run acceptable result to what we're getting now. You can just start by remixing your QC and rerunning it just to rule out any like operator related issue, or maybe the QC wasn't mixed properly. So we can first start by remixing and rerunning the QC. That's a good starting point. Next, if you're still having issues, let's compare your old and new QC lots. So we want to see, were you running fine previously with a different lot number of QC, and now maybe you're seeing a bias or shift with an alternate lot number? That way we can try to pinpoint, is it our QC or is it our test system? And we'll talk about further tools to use here to kind of figure out how to do that and which order to go. We also could compare different shipments of QC. So we want to rule out compromised product. And that's how you can do that, by comparing different shipments. Was there a courier delay? Did something cause my shipment to go outside of the required temperature range? These are things we want to think about. So we want to rule out a QC material related issue first. We want to review our instrument logs. We want to review our corrective actions. We want to review the maintenance issues or calibration flags that we've experienced. Was the instrument recently serviced? Did you notice a QC issue after someone came in and changed a lamp or something on your instrument? These are things we kind of want to pay attention to so that we can pinpoint the source of the issue. Let's evaluate our reagent packs, our reagent kits, and our calibrators. Are we storing the reagents appropriately? Did we switch to a new reagent lot or calibrator lot? These are questions you want to ask so you can pinpoint the source of the issue. We want to check the expiration dates, make sure those are okay. Let's compare across platforms. So a lot of times what I'll see is sometimes a customer may call in and they'll say, hey, I can't get my QC in, but I have 2 instruments. And I'll say, okay, are you seeing the issue on both instruments? So that's a key indicator if you're having an issue that's isolated to one instrument. If you have the issue on both instruments, it could more than likely be a QC related issue because it's very unlikely that you'll have both instruments going down at the same time. Now, I've seen it. We've all probably seen that before. It is possible, but it's very unlikely. So we want to think about that. Are we only seeing the issue on one instrument? If we only have one instrument, do we have like a reference lab or another facility that can run our controls to see if they're getting the same results? Because that can pinpoint whether the issue is isolated to your testing system or if another facility would also see those same issues, indicating a QC or quality control material related issue. So these are some of the things that we can think about when we're trying to determine what's causing the QC issue. So some of the essential tips or recommendations that I like to put out there, starting with make one change at a time. So a lot of times you'll find that you may be so frustrated or overwhelmed that you start changing multiple variables at the same time. Well, it's hard to pinpoint the source of your issue if you're changing everything at the same time. If you're changing your reagent lot, if you're changing your calibrator lot, if you're putting on a new bottle of QC, and then all of a sudden your QC is in. Well, you don't really know what solved your issue. So maybe you want to isolate each step so that you can understand the source of your issue and maybe how you can troubleshoot that in the future if you start to experience the same thing. So I think that's one of the number one tips. Just change one thing at a time so that you can keep track of your troubleshooting process and it's orderly and it makes sense. Let's utilize the manufacturer support. So a lot of times there may be known issues with maybe your quality control material, your reagent, or your calibrator. There are known issues in the field, and maybe you just haven't received a customer letter about it, or maybe the manufacturer support, they can help you troubleshoot further, and they may give you guidance that maybe you didn't think of. So utilize your manufacturers, contact them, whether it's the quality control manufacturer that you want to start with or your instrument manufacturer. Let's use that support there, and maybe they are aware of a similar issue that another customer called in about. So I think that's extremely important. Review QC trends and patterns often. So a lot of times this is not an issue because you have a quality person that reviews these things, reviews your Levy-Jennings charts often so that you can catch trends before they escalate to the point where it is a major issue. So if you're paying attention to your quality controls, you start to notice a shift after a reagent lot change, you can go ahead and figure out the source and understand what's caused that shift up before it's 2 months down the line and you're having major issues and now you have to halt all patient testing. So just make sure you're reviewing those QC trends and patterns often to notice any issues that may occur. Verify recent changes. So again, I kind of touched on this a few times. If say you've run a QC lot for 6 months and all of a sudden 4 months in, you're starting to see an issue. Your values are just way too low. What did we change? Did we change anything around that same time? Did we change a lamp? Did we change our water source? What did we change around the same time that we noticed the QC shift? Let's look at the dates. Let's kind of correspond and try to figure out what may have caused the issue there. Let's compare cross systems. So that's why I mentioned maybe if you had like a nearby lab that you can run your controls just to see if they have the same issue. Are they on the same reagents? Are they on the same calibrators? So that you can help pinpoint that issue by utilizing another lab. Document troubleshooting steps. So I think this is really important because sometimes I'll talk to customers and they've done so many steps, but they have not like recorded. They haven't kept track of what they've done, so they can't really explain like what troubleshooting steps they've taken. So it's harder to kind of assess the situation and figure out which direction to kind of guide them in to help understand what will fix their issue there. So document every troubleshooting step you take, the order, and then that way it's easier for you to continue the process and figure out what the issue is. And so I'll kind of pause. I wasn't sure if there were any questions yet. Let's take a look. Okay.
So far, we don't have any questions, Amari.
Okay. I just want to make sure before I just talk a mile a minute here. Okay, so I'll keep going. Okay. Effective questions for the QC troubleshooting process. What is the pattern? We've mentioned shift, trend, or random error. A lot of times I'll ask customers, can you send me your Levy Jennings chart? Because I'd like to take a look if there were certain patterns. Maybe your control is going out every third day, or maybe it's in when you open a new vial and then all of a sudden it's out the third day. So that can help me understand, is there a stability issue going on? Is there a certain analyte that's more sensitive in your control that's, it's not withstanding that stability claim that may be mentioned for the product? So these are important questions that we want to, important things that we want to look at when it comes to shifts, trends, random errors, and patterns on your Levy Jennings chart there. Is the issue affecting all QC levels or just one? Because that could mean different things. If you're only seeing an issue on one level, one second, because I wrote something down about that I really wanted to mention. Okay, so if one QC level is affected, that may indicate more of like a concentration specific issue, such as a matrix effect, which I'm going to go over later in a different slide, or maybe even sample carryover. So one level being affected could mean those types of things. But if all of your QC levels are affected, that suggests more like a broad issue, maybe such as calibration failure or reagent problems or instrument malfunction. So we want to pay attention to if you're only seeing an issue with one level or multiple levels there. Have there been any recent changes? And I've covered this already. Did you change something on your instrument again? Did you change your reagent lot? Did you change your calibrator? Did you change manufacturers altogether? Maybe your target values need to be reassessed there. Are patient results impacted? So I think this is really important. So if you start to have a quality control related issue and you mainly want to do some sort of correlation study. If you tried rerunning the control, that didn't work, you tried new vial, you've tried to look at your reagent lot, you tried to pinpoint what has changed, but you can't quite pick up on that. The next question is, are you seeing the same issue with your patient or proficiency samples? So you want to maybe pull some previously run proficiency or patient samples from before you start to have your issue. You want to rerun those so we can understand, do you notice the same issue with those samples? Because that rules out the quality control in itself. If you see the same bias or shift, if you got a 5 the first run and it's doubled, then that automatically rules out your control because it's isolated from your patient samples. So that indicates a test system issue, and we probably want to contact the instrument manufacturer, halt all testing until we can make sure we're reporting out correct patient results there. When did the issue begin versus when did you start using your current QC? So again, I kind of mentioned earlier, if you've been running a QC for a QC lot number for a whole year or a product for a whole year, and then all of a sudden it shifts after running it for so long, if you've already ruled out like a storage condition, storage condition related issue. There's no like compromised product issue. Your freezer is okay. It's been maintained at the correct temperature. We want to, that basically to me kind of rules out the QC product unless there's some known quality issue for the product. If you're seeing an issue randomly and you've been using the control for so long, you may want to look into your reagent, calibrator, test system issue, or test system in general. Is the issue occurring on multiple instruments? So we've already covered that, so I won't go into that any further. Were your controls shipped and used according to instructions for use? So I think this is really important. A lot of times customers will say, hey, I've been using this control product for a long time. I know how to use it. So it's definitely not a handling issue. But some things could change. So you just want to make sure you're checking those instructions for use and making sure you're handling products appropriately. You're handling your reagent appropriately. You're adding the appropriate volume of water to a certain product if that's required. You're mixing it appropriately. These things can all affect your QC results. So we just want to make sure we're handling controls appropriately. We're handling reagents and calibrators appropriately. Do the quality control products have known limitations? So I think this is a big one. Sometimes you have more sensitive analytes and they may deteriorate over a certain period of time. So we want to pay attention to those things. Are there known limitations for certain analytes, for certain assays? Is this expected? Is this shift down or is this shift up expected for this particular analyte?
Amari, we do have a question here, and there's a couple of questions. I think I can combine them in just one.
Okay.
So the first question is, what is the difference from a shift versus trend? Are they both the same? Please be specific. And the second question that follows is a shift just a few points versus trend, which is a lot of points going up or down from the mean?
Yes, so I'm actually going to go to the slide that I want to kind of go to kind of talk about that. So that's when you come to your Westgard rules. A shift is a trend. Again, like I said, a trend is more so over time. So if you have 10 consecutive values on the same side of the mean, that is a potential shift because that happened pretty drastically. You have 10 results that shifted drastically above the mean. So that's definitely a shift. Whereas a trend is going to be a little more gradual. It's not going to be as obvious to pick up on. And it's just, like I said, it's just going to happen over time. And those can be due to certain things like changes in your environment where your instrument is placed, or maybe like a lamp change or something that gradually happens over time. So I'm going to go back. Okay. So I wanted to talk about some common causes of quality control issues and then how you can resolve those. So matrix effect. Matrix effect is basically defined as the effect on an analytical assay caused by all other sample components except the analyte that is to be analyzed. So sometimes what you'll find is you'll have a certain reagent lot that has a matrix effect with maybe your quality control material, causing the data to shift in a certain direction, affecting your results. And in order to determine if you're experiencing that kind of thing, you want to determine if previously run patient or proficiency samples are also shifting. More than likely, if there's a matrix effect between just the reagent and the control, you're not going to see that same shift with your patient samples. So that is one way you can indicate if you're experiencing something similar to a matrix effect. And again, if you call the manufacturer of the product, these are things that they may be able to help you pinpoint. Maybe these are known issues that have been reported to them already. So this is one way you can determine if you have this type of issue. Compromised or contaminated QC. Try a new vial or bottle of QC. And then try a new shipment of QC products so we can rule out compromised product. Temperature excursion. So check your storage conditions. Make sure your freezer is not going outside of the expected temperature range that's listed in your instructions for use for your products. There are certain freezers that are, I forgot what you call them, but they automatically defrost. They're auto defrost freezers. So if that's something that you have, you just want to make sure that it doesn't cause your products to thaw and then rethaw and then go through these freeze thaw cycles, causing issues with your products. Improper handling, I've already touched that one. Contaminated water source. So I do know a lot of labs, they do culture their water sources often. And I worked in a microbiology lab, and that was one of the things that we monitored and read the different cultures from the water sources for our chemistry analyzers. So that is something that many labs do just to make sure their water source is not contaminated. Calibration errors. So recalibrate and try to alternate maybe your calibrator light. Check in and make sure there's no known field issues with your calibrators causing you to have a sudden issue here. Carryover. So you want to run a high-low test sequence to figure out if you're experiencing carryover, causing you to see fluctuations with a certain analyte. That's a way you can pinpoint whether you're having a carryover issue. Improper target values. So I'll see this a lot. You'll be surprised. A lot of customers, maybe they looked at the manufacturer ranges and they didn't realize they were looking at the wrong units. It happens a lot. So they're thinking, their results are way higher than they should be. And I'll say, well, are you reporting in nanograms per milliliter or nanograms per deciliter or whatever units they may be reporting? And they'll be like, oh, I didn't realize there were different units that I need to pay attention to. So just make sure your target values are the right units. You're looking at the appropriate target values for your method of your assay. You can find your method for your reagent in your reagent instructions for use. That's a place where you can find your specific method to know if you're looking at the appropriate target values. So establishing mean, standard deviation, and acceptable range. So
Amari, we sorry to interrupt. I have one more questions here. Eula asks, she's a new MLT and she will be soon starting her first job, and she asks, in regards of QC, out of the mean for more than a week, and the QA has not mentioned anything about it. Is it okay to run QC when both level of QC is out of the mean?
No, I definitely do not think so. So I think once you have an event, okay, you have a mean that is outside of your 2SD range. A value that is outside of your 2SD range one time. That's where we want to start to monitor things. But for a week, that's definitely an event that would cause you to halt testing. We have to pinpoint the issue because we need to make sure the patient results are not affected. Maybe, I don't know, why the QA person wouldn't have picked up on such an extensive period of time of your QC being out. But definitely once you reach that point where, your mean, you can't get the mean in for your shift, we're going to have to try to pinpoint what's going on, what's causing your issue so that we are not reporting out improper patient results. So definitely I would stop testing at that. I know a lot of times if you could not get the QC in within your shift, that's when you have to start, because I was a team lead during the weekend sometimes, that's when you have to start trying to figure out, are we going to have to start sending samples to another facility, our reference lab? You kind of want to get some guidance from someone who's more experienced than you. And I will tell you the best advice anyone could have given me when I was a new lab tech in the lab: don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't feel ashamed if you don't understand anything. There's still things that I don't know, and I don't claim to know them all, but I'm willing to research it. I'm willing to use my resources and ask the people around me. People have been in the field for way longer than me. Use your resources and don't be afraid to ask. I have had situations where I wish I would have acted differently. I did have a situation where I couldn't get QC in the whole shift. And instead of speaking up and talking to someone about what was going on, I kind of was a little ashamed that I couldn't get the QC in. So I didn't speak up until the end of the shift. And so we did have to go back and pull patient samples just to rerun those after we got the QC in, just to make sure everything matched as far as patient samples. So I do say in that type of event, maybe you want to reach out to someone that has a little more experience to try to pinpoint what's going on, because that's definitely an extensive period of time to have QC out for so long. Okay, so I was speaking about mean, ST, and acceptable range. So mean, of course, is your average. It's the sum of your QC values divided by the number of your QC runs. So mean, most people understand that. That's not really a hard concept for most people when I talk to them. Standard deviation. I know this formula is kind of like a little scary. It is a little scary. So the easiest or the best advice I can give people is to create an Excel sheet so that you can input all your data points and it can calculate the standard deviation, mean, coefficient of variation, and all those values for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But I kind of do break it down here. It is the sum of differences between each QC value and the mean squared. Well, what does that mean? What does it measure? So basically, standard deviation is measuring the dispersion of your data in relation to the mean. And so it's measuring your precision or maybe your imprecision. So if your data is so far away from the mean, we're going to kind of get worried if it's a certain amount of data points away from your mean and it should be within a certain range and it's not. So that's kind of what standard deviation is. It's more related to your precision and how close you're hitting the target value. Acceptable range. So it is the mean plus or minus 1, 2, or 3 standard deviations. So some customers will use a 2 SD range or a 3 SD range, and some instruments require you to input a 2 SD range or a 3 SD range. But the key factor here is you just want to make sure 68% of your values are within 1 standard deviation, 95.5% are within the 2 SD range, and then 99.7% within the 3 SD range. And a lot of times your QC manufacturer, they're going to give you manufacturer target values, and they'll give you the standard deviation. And what I'll find is a lot of people, they ask for help with calculating the range when they have just the standard deviation and the mean. So if your standard deviation is 5 and your mean is 10, in order to calculate 1 standard deviation, I'm just going to add my SD to my mean, and that gives me 15. So any value that is 15 data points away from the mean, that is 1 standard deviation, and then so on. So if you need a 2 SD range, you're going to take your standard deviation and multiply it by 2, and then add it to your mean. And that's how you calculate your range. To get the upper end of the range, you're going to add to the mean. To get the lower end of the range, you're going to subtract from the mean. So a lot of times I find that those basic things, maybe people just don't grasp in school, or maybe they, it's kind of brushed over. So it's like those basic skills of calculating standard deviation and different calculations there, people just need assistance with, or they just need reminders for. So I do go over that kind of thing a lot from day to day. And I did want to mention, so the CLSI guidelines, they do suggest to run 1 level of QC material in duplicate over 5 days, totaling at least 10 results. although it is best to at least run 20 results or more for better statistical accuracy. So a lot of times what I'll find is customers will want to just take the listed manufacturer mean and range and input that into their instrument. Well, it is best practice to just use those target values as a guideline. Establish your own mean and range with your 10 to 20 data points, and then calculate your mean, SD, and range off of those values, and then compare it to the target values provided by the manufacturer. So that way you can determine if you're way off from what they're listing, then maybe we may need to look into a few things. But things can vary, like reagent lots, calibrator lots, and those are reasons why your data may not align specifically with listed target values sometimes. So I'll touch on coefficient of variation. Sometimes it's just an easier measurement to use versus SD because it's in percentage. And so the lower the CV, the more precise your results are. The higher your CV, the more imprecision you have. And you'll find that your guideline for knowing what is considered a high CV or a low CV will be listed in your reagent instructions for use. Most times for an assay, they'll tell you this is the acceptable CV. A lot of times if it's greater than 10%, you really need to look into what's causing your imprecision with the assay. And so I kind of have a little example here. Right here, I list like a mean value for glucose, which is 100 milligrams per deciliter. And then I come down here and I list a mean of 0.05 for troponin. Well, because these are in different units, it's harder for me to compare the standard deviations for these two assays because they're in different concentration levels. So when you look at coefficient of variation, because it's a percentage, it's easier for you to kind of pinpoint your precision or imprecision. If I know that, oh, I have 4% CV for both glucose and troponin, I know those values are less than 5. So my precision is probably okay based on the what your set goal is for precision there. But normally a CV of 4% is probably acceptable in this case. And so I won't go into too much detail on the Levy-Jennings chart again, but because I kind of touched base on them a lot already. But this is how you notice your shifts or random errors or trends. If I have one result that's 2 SD outside of my range, then I know that I probably should monitor that. If I have a result that is 3 standard deviations out, we're going to stop and investigate for sure. We want to stop and figure out what's causing my data to be 3 standard deviations outside of my expected mean there. So these are some of the patterns that you kind of want to pay attention to and, monitor often so that you can make sure you're catching a potential trend or shift so that you can catch it early. So I do have.
We have a question from Joanna Santos. She asks, "What can cause a tight range?"
What can cause a what?
A tight, narrow range.
A narrow range. Yeah. So what I find is normally if you have a narrow range, your results are pretty precise. Your assay is pretty precise. Sometimes if your SD is a little too tight, what you can do is you can call your quality control manufacturer, sometimes even your instrument manufacturer that provides your assay. You can ask them, hey, do you have pure data? Because I want to see what the SD values are for other customers. Is my SD value a little too tight? And again, this is information you can find in your assay instructions for use. Normally, they'll give you charts, they'll give you values so that you can compare what you're getting as far as like your SD, your CV values, and know what is considered acceptable for that specific assay, because it can be different for different assays. But normally, if it's a little tight, it's because, I mean, your assay is pretty precise there. Your test system is pretty precise. But sometimes that does cause an issue for customers. When they switch to a different reagent lot, they start to notice that their values are outside of their expected range there because their SD is so tight. So in that case, we want to go to our instructions for use. We want to talk to the manufacturers. We want to figure out if you're the only lab experiencing such a tight range there, or such a tight SD value, and if this is what is expected for your assay.
And I would also like to take in a moment to mention all of our audience that Amari wrote a blog on how to master QC crossover studies, and it provides a step-by-step guide for to troubleshoot the QC crossover study. So if you all are interested, please go to our website. It's a very well-written blog, and I also posted a link to that blog in the chat section. Right. Thank you, Mike.
Yes, no problem. Okay, so I do have a little fun case study here. So the scenario here is your QC for sodium is testing consistently low. Your issue started last week, but your QC lot was started 5 months ago. You do use deionized water in order to make up the QC products. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You do use deionized water for dilution on the instrument. Sorry. Some of the troubleshooting steps that you've taken here: you've checked the reagent lot. You have not changed reagent lots recently. You've compared another instrument. You're having the same issue on a different instrument in your same facility. You've ruled out compromised product by trying a new shipment and lot of QC, but you're still experiencing low sodium results. After reviewing QC failures across multiple assays, you notice that the issue is not isolated to just a single test, or it's not isolated just to sodium, but affects several unrelated analytes. Any thoughts on what could be the source of the QC failure?
Maybe
Okay.
Natalia says maybe calibrator related.
Okay. Any others?
A few other responses: water problem, lamp going bad. Julie said instrument.
Yes, yes. So we're going to go through.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of votes on water issues. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is correct. It's definitely probably the water source there. And so let's break down each step here of the troubleshooting process. So if your QC lot has been used for 5 months and then the issue just started recently, it's likely not your QC that's causing the issue, unless you've changed something with your storage, not using it appropriately, it's compromised. You have the same issue on another instrument. This rules out instrument-specific problems because, again, it's not very likely that both of your instruments are causing an issue at the same time there. So it's likely not specifically your test system. And then your new QC lot and shipment also give low results. So you ruled out QC degradation issues as well. And then multiple unrelated assays are affected. So this suggests a common system component is at fault. And so what I wrote here is that the deionized water is likely the culprit. The DI water is used across multiple assays in both instruments. If the DI water is improperly produced, if it's contaminated or lacks ionic strength, it could cause dilution errors, electrolyte imbalance in reagents or samples, and then systematic QC shifts across analytes. So if you can see, we started out by ruling out our QC. We've compared instruments. We looked at if it was if there were multiple analytes affected, and then we kind of ruled it down to our water source. So good job to all the people that mentioned the water source there. That was great answer. So
We
I
have
kind
one more question here. I think it's related to the previous question. Um, is about the what can cause the narrow range. Elisa said sometimes texts don't record the out of range values, and that causes tight ranges. How do you encourage texts to include these values, or should you?
So I think everyone should definitely do their part. So a lot of times, I found even as a supervisor in the lab, it can be hard to implement these types of things, but make it a standard. Make it something that, I don't know, maybe you have a whiteboard. I know where I used to work, we had a whiteboard and we would put up our certain issues that we face during the shift, because I know things can get hectic and you're busy. So a lot of times you may even just forget. So make it a habit and the standard that everyone writes what they're facing during their shift or what has occurred during their shift, so that it's normalized and people, are expected to do so. So record their issues that they're having. But a QC log is extremely important as well. And I know we had like this is kind of archaic a little bit. We had like a journal as well, like a little notebook where we kind of wrote out the date and whatever QC issues we had, as well as the troubleshooting steps that we took there. So I think you just have to, it's one of those things where you just have to do, and you have to have leadership that kind of back you up. So I think speaking up, even if you're a new person, just say, hey, I really think this would be beneficial to all parties in the lab if we move forward by recording these things and just making sure people are doing that. But it is up to leadership to kind of help implement that, and so that it doesn't feel like it's your job to kind of get people to do so. So I think there's many different factors to that, and hopefully that was helpful.
And Amari, we have one more question here. I think it's related to the previous case study section. Julie asked, what if we don't have multiple instruments?
So that's when you can, like I said, if maybe you have another lab that you kind of partner with or a sister lab. I know we had a reference lab, and then we had like surrounding labs that sometimes we borrow things from, even if they don't have your same instrument, because what you'll find is the manufacturer of the QC, a lot of times they'll have data for multiple platforms. So if you could potentially ask them to run your controls, if that's too much, you don't have any surrounding labs, call your manufacturer so that they can help you, maybe send you a new shipment of product so that you can rule out instrument related issues another way, using other troubleshooting steps. So if you don't have like a surrounding lab, you don't have a second instrument, call up your manufacturer. They'll walk you through how to further troubleshoot, and they'll even assist you. Maybe they'll look into the system to see if there are any similar complaints, and that can help you. And they can tell you what another customer did, or they can send you new product to help you roll out instrument related issue. And so I wanted to kind of end by saying thank you all so much for joining. This was my first webinar. Hopefully you couldn't tell, but I was really excited to speak with everyone today, and hopefully you learned something from the presentation. If you ever have any questions, you just want to reach out to say hi, you can find me on LinkedIn. Again, my name is Amari Henderson, and I'll be happy to speak with you, answer any questions you may have, or if you just want to share insight. Again, I don't claim to know it all, so I'm always open to learning. I think that's the best way to grow. So I do have my key takeaways here. I'm not going to read them through because I kind of like hit them over the head multiple times here. But again, thank you all so much for joining, and I appreciate everyone. I hope you all have a great
Thank you, Mari. I know we have 7 more minutes left, so maybe we can squeeze in a couple of more questions before we end the webinar. Victor said, how important is method comparison?
That is extremely important. It's so important that a lot of times I'll find customers will call me and they'll say, "Hey, what's my method?" And I'm like, I can't tell you your method. You literally have to, your instructions for use for your reagent is so important. You can even Google your assay IFU and look up your method from there. A lot of times, most labs know it because maybe they're reporting peer group data or something like that. So they know their method, but it's extremely important because your data can really vary based on your method. You want to make sure you're comparing the same method, sometimes even the same reagent reference number, reagent lot number, because you can see variability based on those factors. So it's extremely important. Any more questions?
We have a questions from Lisa. I think someone's saying that their sites probably reject. So there was a question about QC being rejected, and she said it was still not answered. I'm trying to get more clarification from Lisa, so you
Okay.
could answer those. Lisa, if we didn't get to answer your questions in today's webinar, please feel free to email us the question, and we'll happy to answer that for you.
Yeah, just send it to us because maybe I didn't quite understand the question fully, and I'd be happy to answer it.
There's one more question. Victor asks, what happens with CLIA 2024 if some old methods don't meet?
What happens with CLIA 2? I don't know that I understand the question fully, but I will say, what happens with CLIA 2 if some old methods don't meet? Yeah, I may have to get further information from you regarding that question because I don't know that I quite understand. But I'd be happy to answer it after the webinar if you could provide further information for that question.
And I think we still have a lot of questions regarding how can we access the printout of the webinar. As far as the webinar session, we will be sending you a recorded webinar session, and so you can access them later as well. And if anyone would like the presentation deck that Amari presented here, Amari would be happy to share that with you as well. And there were some question regarding whether we can get a certification of attendance. I will look into that. I will see if this platform will allow us to generate a certificate of attendance. And I will look into that and I'll inform all of you regarding that as well. Right. Amari, we have 3 more minutes. Can we take one more question? I'll leave it up to you.
Sure.
So this Aya asks, is there a CB percentage limit for judgment?
Yes. So again, the standard for most analytes is usually like 10%. So if it's over 10%, that is like, that stands out to me. If I see a CV of like 14 or 24, but it depends on the assay. It depends on the analyte. So, there could be a certain analyte that's known for imprecision. Like I said, there's certain analytes that are more sensitive. So you want to go back to your assay instructions for use, and it will tell you, it'll have data charts in the instructions for use. Usually you kind of got to go like pages into the instructions for use to find it, but it'll list out acceptable CV values, and you'll know for that particular assay what's considered acceptable. But a key overall value that you want to kind of look at is usually like 10%. If you notice a CV over 10%, that is alarming to me.
Thank you, Mari. All right, let me see if we have any more questions here. All right, I think we will wrap up here. And if there were any question that we missed, I will check them again after the webinar, and I will be sure to provide those answers to you. And I really want to thank you all so much for joining us, and I hope you found this session useful. We will, as I mentioned before, I will send the recording of the webinar and also the presentation deck to you so you can review them later if you need to. And also, Amari, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us the valuable insights regarding the QC and troubleshooting guides. And please don't forget to complete the evaluation form at the end. I would really appreciate you if you could take some time to complete that, because it will really help us improve in our future sessions. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank
Bye,
you all.
everyone.
Bye-bye.